Late on the night of July 10, 2001, a chilling distress call shattered the calm of the North Ryde Police Department in New South Wales, Australia. A voice trembled with urgency, announcing, "Yes, I'm going to shoot my parents. I think they're all bleeding." Panic escalated as the operator pressed for details. "They're on the floor. What suburb are you in?" The frantic response came, "They're not bleeding. What do I do? What suburb are you in?" "North Ryde. North Ryde," the voice repeated, a desperate echo of fear. "Yes, and your parents are—" the operator inquired, urgency thick in the air. "They're not moving. They've both been shot." The caller's voice turned frantic. "I don't know this motherfucker. Help me! Help me!" The operator's calm assurance cut through the chaos. "Yeah, we will. Help me!" The plea hung in the air as police officers and medical personnel rushed to the scene. What they found was horrific. Out of a family of 4, only one had survived the horrific violence. Huddled in a corner of the garage, the lone survivor was a vision of despair, evoking heartbreak in the officers who arrived. Yet, within just 3 days of the tragedy, this young man was already anxiously probing about the family inheritance. At the funeral, he sang "One Sweet Day," a haunting performance that resonated with mourners. Shortly after, he used government compensation to buy a luxury car, a move that naturally raised eyebrows and suspicion among the police. The truth was a web woven with lies and insatiable greed. He had deceived not only his parents and relatives but also himself. Since his conviction in 2004, he has steadfastly maintained his innocence. However, on April 3, 2023, his appeal was once again denied, sealing his fate. As of now, he remains behind bars. But what truly transpired that night in July 2001? To unravel this mystery, we must journey back to North Ryde, where it all began. North Ryde, a suburb in New South Wales, lies near Macquarie University, often dubbed the Silicon Valley of Australia. This area is a thriving hub for high-tech companies such as Microsoft, HP, Oracle, and 3M, framed by a convenient transport system. With both a train station and numerous bus routes, North Ryde is merely 15 kilometers from the bustling central business district, making it a prime location for middle-class families to call home. The Gonzalez family resided in a 2-story villa at 6 Collins Street, an impressive property with 4 bedrooms. The villa boasted 3 bathrooms, 2 parking spaces, and a spacious lawn, a true gem. Teddy Gonzalez had purchased the residence in 1999 for $20,000 Australian dollars and embarked on significant renovations. The Gonzalez family officially moved into their new home in December 2000. Teddy, a resilient man, was born into poverty in Baguio City, Philippines in 1954. He was the 4th child in a family that struggled to survive. Yet, Teddy never succumbed to bitterness. He worked tirelessly, ultimately gaining admission to the law faculty at Baguio University. As he neared graduation, he encountered Mary Louisa Claridatas, setting in motion a series of events that would lead to tragedy. In a tale of unexpected romance, Teddy Gonzalez met Mary Louisa Claridatas, a junior 3 years his junior. It was love at first sight. Mary, the eldest in her family, radiated gentleness and kindness, mirroring Teddy's own hard-working spirit. In 1977, shortly after Mary Louisa Gonzalez graduated, she and Teddy wed. Despite the demands of his work, Teddy remained a hopeless romantic, often surprising Mary with thoughtful gestures, unexpected flowers, and candlelit dinners that spoke of his deep affection. Their son, Seth Gonzalez, was born on September 16, 1980. Teddy had chosen a name with profound significance, one he planned to unveil on Seth's 21st birthday. 3 years later, on July 9, 1983, their daughter, Claudine, entered the world. Beginning his career as a lawyer, Teddy gradually amassed wealth through real estate before expanding into various business ventures, including audio stores, pharmacies, hotels, and more. While Teddy displayed remarkable capabilities, his wife's family achieved even greater success. Mary's brother-in-law's father served as the mayor of Baguio City from 1986 to 1988, during which time Teddy held the pivotal position of secretary to the mayor. The Gonzalez family thrived politically and in business. In 1989, Teddy invested all his savings into constructing a 4-story hotel with 40 rooms, which initially flourished. However, just months later, disaster struck when a 7.7 magnitude earthquake devastated Baguio City. The earthquake claimed 142 lives, instantly obliterating Teddy Gonzalez's career and home. In a harrowing moment, his son, Seth, found himself trapped in a stairwell. Driven by a father's love, Teddy risked his own life, crawling into the crevice to rescue Seth. This act of bravery left him with a chronic ligament injury, a painful reminder of the day everything changed. Miraculously, the entire family emerged from the disaster unscathed. Teddy and Mary felt a profound sense of gratitude, believing they had been blessed by a higher power. With renewed determination, they set their sights on rebuilding their lives. Determined to start anew, they decided to emigrate to Australia, where Mary's sister, Emily, and her family had already settled. In 1990, Teddy prepared for a fresh start by reviewing and retaking the exams necessary to obtain his law license in Australia. By 1993, Teddy had successfully opened an immigration law office, with Mary managing internal operations. Teddy focused on client acquisition and external affairs. His skills attracted a steady stream of clients, allowing the family to quickly ascend to the middle class within their new community. As devout Catholics, Teddy and Mary established a home altar and attended Mass 3 to 4 times a week. They prioritized their children's education, harboring hopes that Seth and Claudine would achieve even greater success than they had. To ensure their children thrived academically, they invested heavily in education, rewarding and disciplining them to maintain their focus. Yet, unbeknownst to them, this intense pressure would inadvertently lay the groundwork for a tragedy that loomed on the horizon. On July 10, 2001, Teddy and Mary drove separately to their respective workplaces, while their son, Seth, had a busy day ahead. He began his morning at school, followed by an afternoon spent at his father's law office, with plans to meet friends later that evening. Meanwhile, their daughter, Claudine, enjoyed her summer break at home. That day, Seth spent the afternoon at his father's law office, eagerly preparing for an evening out with friends. Meanwhile, their daughter, Claudine Gonzalez, relished her summer break by staying home to unwind. Claudine Gonzalez had spent the day of her 18th birthday immersed in the joy of reading and laughter with friends. As the sun began to set, she eagerly reached for her phone, hoping to finalize plans for continued celebrations. Yet before the night could unfold as she wished, the clock struck 11:45 p.m., and Claudine's vibrant presence vanished without a trace. Her brother, Seth Gonzalez, returned home just minutes later. In a state of panic, he dialed the police, his voice trembling with urgency. This frantic call was the first whisper of a tragedy that would soon echo far and wide. "We're sending an ambulance now," came the calm yet chilling response from the dispatcher. Desperate for assistance, Seth rushed to his neighbors, exclaiming in fear, "I saw 2 figures!" His alarmed neighbors quickly reached out to the police once more, the gravity of the situation settling heavily upon them. As Seth's desire to rush back into the house grew, a neighbor intervened, holding him back for his own safety. Then, in a moment of sheer desperation, Seth shouted, "I know CPR!" Before he could finish, he bolted toward the house, the neighbor risking everything to stop him. Yet Seth was forcibly pulled back outside by concerned neighbors. Despite the swift arrival of police and medical personnel, time had cruelly slipped away. Teddy Gonzalez, 46, Mary Louisa Gonzalez, 43, and their beloved daughter, Claudine, aged 18, lay lifeless within their home. The medical team quickly determined that none had suffered gunshot wounds. Instead, they had met their end at the hands of a sharp object, with Mary's gruesome neck wound serving as a horrific focal point. A canine unit was dispatched to track the 2 figures Seth had glimpsed, but the relentless rain that night hampered their search, leaving no scent for the dogs to follow. As Seth collapsed, overcome by despair, Senior Officer Mike approached him, offering comfort during this dark moment. He then inquired about any recent unusual occurrences. Seth recounted the harrowing events from the night before, when, following his sister's birthday celebration, their family had been targeted on the road. A car had sped past them, and a voice had yelled, "Die, you Asians!" This shocking revelation piqued Officer Mike's interest, as he had been baffled by the strange writing discovered at the crime scene. Now a potential motive began to take shape, suggesting a targeted assault against their family. In the early hours of July 11th, Seth provided police with a detailed account of his whereabouts that day. He explained that he had been out with friends, a planned meeting that granted him an indisputable alibi. By July 13th, the police officially cleared Seth as a suspect. In a poignant press conference, Seth made a heartfelt appeal to the public, offering a reward of 100,000 AUD for any information leading to the capture of his family's killer. Picture the four corners of the world in my world. We were the four. My family, friends, and I would like to ask anyone out there to please help us. However, as the investigation delved deeper, unsettling doubts began to surface. The notion that this was a racially motivated attack grew murky. Remarkably, nearly 1,000 AUD in cash remained untouched in Teddy and Mary's wallets, indicating that robbery was not the motive behind this brutal act. Furthermore, the house itself told a story of its own. It was eerily clean and tidy, despite every closet and drawer being left wide open, their contents meticulously arranged as though they were on display for an audience. The unsettling details began to paint a picture far more complex than what initially met the eye. Investigators quickly ruled out robbery as a motive. The house was eerily immaculate, with every closet and drawer left ajar, the clothes inside neatly arranged as if on display. In a scene of unimaginable horror, all three victims had been brutally murdered. Mary Louisa Gonzalez lay lifeless, suffering from a severe neck wound. Her daughter, Claudine Gonzalez, had endured 7 stab wounds and multiple blunt force injuries, evident from the dent in her bedroom wall, a silent witness to the violence that unfolded within. Investigators soon discovered that 2 knives were missing from the kitchen, later identified as the instruments of death that matched the wounds inflicted upon the victims. Remarkably, the 6 dogs in the house remained unharmed, locked away in the laundry room, oblivious to the tragedy. The only indication of forced entry was found in the kitchen, a place that would soon reveal dark secrets. Yet as the detectives combed through the evidence, they found no fingerprints on the kitchen countertops. The investigation took a turn when they noted that the window frame had been broken outward, suggesting a calculated approach rather than a random intrusion. The timeline of the victims' deaths was as chilling as the crime scene itself, indicating that the horror had lasted at least 3 agonizing hours. Through meticulous measurements of the victims' body temperatures, investigators uncovered a crucial detail. Claudine's and Mary's body temperatures were lower than Teddy Gonzalez's, indicating that the mother and daughter had been killed first. Blood found on a briefcase and handbag at the scene hinted that these items had been deliberately placed there, suggesting a sinister intention rather than a chaotic struggle. This revelation prompted police to shift their investigative focus. The first step in this complex puzzle was to establish the exact time of death for each victim. By analyzing phone logs, they deduced that Claudine was likely murdered between 4:10 p.m. and 4:30 p.m., her last text message sent at 4:10 p.m., while an open book on her desk signified she had been studying. Mary's time of death was estimated around 5:30 p.m. that day. She had left work at 4:50 p.m., expected to drive home within 30 to 40 minutes. The evidence suggested she was killed almost immediately upon entering the house, as she was still wearing her shoes. Typically, upon arriving home, she would have changed her shoes and placed her handbag in one of 2 designated spots. Teddy's estimated time of death was around 7:00 p.m. After leaving work at 6:23 p.m., he made 2 phone calls to his residence, the last moments of a life cut tragically short. It appeared Teddy was also murdered as soon as he entered the house, his work attire still intact and a briefcase lying beside him. If this had been an attack specifically targeting Asians, one would expect a different pattern of behavior from the assailant. But the circumstances surrounding this attack pointed to a personal motive rather than a senseless act of violence. The perpetrator would not have waited patiently for each family member to return home, nor would they have forgotten to bring a weapon, resorting instead to using whatever was available at the scene. After committing these heinous acts, the perpetrator even took the time to shower, evidenced by the water found on the bathroom floor, a chilling reminder of their callousness amidst the chaos left behind. 6 days after the horrific incident, police turned their attention to Seth Gonzalez, asking him to recount the events of that fateful night in detail. However, as he spoke, inconsistencies in his story began to emerge. Seth claimed he had arrived at the front of his house around 6:00 p.m., but curiously, he did not get out of the car. In a chilling turn of events, Seth Gonzalez received a text from friends announcing a 2-hour delay for dinner. The rain poured relentlessly outside, prompting him to forego entering his home. Instead, he attempted to reach out through the house phone, but silence greeted his calls. With growing concern, he decided to drive to another location. Seth aimed to meet a different friend in Blacktown, a town located 28 kilometers away. Yet, as fate would have it, this friend had recently moved, leaving Seth to wander for 2 hours in search of the new address. Finally, at 8 p.m., he found his friend, and they spent the evening sharing dinner and playing video games, seemingly oblivious to the dark events unfolding back home. As the night deepened, Seth drove home at 11:45 p.m. It was then that he called the police, his voice heavy with distress. He described finding his sister Claudine in a horrifying state, bleeding and in need of urgent assistance. He claimed to have tried to administer first aid. However, doubts began to surface regarding his credibility as questions arose about his unsuccessful search for his friend's new address. After 2 hours of searching, his assertion appeared illogical. The forensic report would soon shatter his narrative. Claudine had been deceased for a significant period before he found her. The implications were grim. She could not have been bleeding, and her heart had long ceased to beat. Furthermore, there were no signs of CPR being performed on her lifeless body. Adding to the tension, Seth had mentioned seeing 2 figures, yet multiple police reenactments revealed a startling contradiction. The noise generated by his car entering the garage and his subsequent entry into the house would have been loud enough to alert any potential intruders, granting them precious moments to escape. It became increasingly unlikely that Seth could have seen anyone had there indeed been intruders present. This chain of events led the police to suspect that Seth, the sole survivor of the Gonzalez family, might possess a deeper involvement in the horrific crime that had unfolded. Given the state of the home, it seemed implausible that anyone could have entered unnoticed. This led police to consider the chilling possibility that Seth, the sole survivor of the family, might have played a role in the horrific crime. The investigation intensified as police meticulously searched Seth's room. There they uncovered a piece of clothing with traces of blue paint matching the graffiti found on the wall at the crime scene. They also seized his computer and an empty shoebox that once contained a pair of shoes identical to those found at the scene. A comparison of the bloody footprints at the crime scene confirmed a match with Seth's shoes. Moreover, a closer inspection of Seth's internet search history from February to July 2001 revealed a disturbing pattern. His searches were filled with inquiries about plant poisons. Following this lead, investigators discovered that on June 24th, Seth had purchased highly toxic plant seeds. Although the specifics of the plant remained under government order and could not be disclosed, the circumstances surrounding the purchase were undeniably suspicious. Coincidentally, just a week prior to the murders, on July 3rd, Mary Louisa Gonzalez had been hospitalized due to severe stomach pain and diarrhea, requiring emergency care for a day. Doctors had diagnosed her with colitis, but the police began to suspect something far more sinister. Since her test results did not align with food poisoning, investigators were led to believe that Mary had indeed been poisoned with the very plant seeds Seth had acquired. During Seth's third police interrogation on August 3rd, the gravity of the situation began to dawn on everyone involved. In a desperate attempt to justify his actions, Seth claimed he had purchased toxic seeds because he was heartbroken and disillusioned with life. This flimsy excuse was just another clumsy lie. But without direct evidence, the truth remained elusive. The police, unable to charge Seth initially, opted to release him while wiretapping his phone. They implemented a parallel strategy to ensnare him. Interestingly, it wasn't just law enforcement that found his behavior suspicious. Friends and family alike noted that something was off. For instance, on the day of the press conference, Seth made a deliberate visit to the family accountant to inquire about the inheritance. At the funeral, he shocked over 300 guests by singing the song One Sweet Day. Afterward, he moved into a luxury apartment and used government compensation funds to refurbish his mother's car, just 2 months after the tragic incident. In a startling deception, Seth claimed he was suffering from brain cancer and needed AUD 190,000 for surgery. He even went so far as to send fake medical documents to his relatives in an attempt to scam them for money. However, those fraudulent documents ultimately found their way into the hands of the police. Despite Seth's attempts to secure AUD 190,000 in compensation, his efforts crumbled when his government payments were suspended. Strapped for cash, he resorted to selling off his valuables, including jewelry, watches, and his parents' 2 cars. With a sudden influx of cash, Seth wasted no time. He ordered a Lexus, a luxury vehicle valued at AUD 173,000. The salesperson, sensing something was amiss, cautioned him, saying the car was expensive. Yet, without a moment's hesitation, Seth replied, claiming he had inherited money. On the night of the murders, Seth's aunt, Emily, had a strange encounter that would haunt her. Around 6:30 p.m., while picking up her son from school, she stopped by her sister's house. It was there that she noticed Seth's car parked in the garage, but the house itself was eerily dark and silent. Emily rang the doorbell 3 times, each ring echoing in the stillness, but no one answered. Feeling a growing sense of unease, she contemplated walking around to the side door to peek inside. Just then, she spotted a figure moving within the house. At first, she dismissed it as a coat rack, but as she peered closer, a chilling realization struck her. Her sister had 6 dogs, yet there wasn't a single bark to be heard. The more she pondered the unsettling scene, the more anxious she grew. Ultimately, she decided to take her son home, distinctly recalling that it hadn't started raining yet. Meanwhile, another witness, one of Teddy's clients, also reported seeing Seth's car. This client had arrived to deliver documents between 4:15 p.m. and 4:30 p.m. and had noticed Seth's unmistakable blue Ford parked in the garage. The car was a familiar sight, easily recognizable to those who knew the family. By 2 months after the crime, the police's undercover sting operation began to bear fruit. An undercover officer established a friendship with Seth, complimenting his fashion sense to gain his trust. Once they grew closer, the officer casually bragged about having an informant within the police station. Seth, drawn in by the bait, asked the officer to gather information about his family's case, revealing his desperation. In a calculated move, the undercover officer revealed to Seth Gonzalez that witnesses had spotted his car parked in the garage around 4:00 p.m. on the fateful day of the murders. The police, keen to observe his reaction, wanted to see how Seth would attempt to fabricate an alibi. Sure enough, upon receiving this information, Seth quietly set about crafting a second alibi. By January 2002, he brazenly confronted the police, altering his initial account. He claimed, "I actually arrived home before 4:30 p.m. but didn't go inside." In a twist of absurdity, Seth declared that instead he had taken a taxi from home to a brothel to unwind. He confessed that he had withheld this detail out of embarrassment. Unbeknownst to him, his phone calls were being monitored. He repeatedly contacted the brothel, inquiring, "Do you have security cameras? How long have you been open? Do you keep copies of your guest registry?" Each of these conversations was meticulously recorded by the police. Crucially, the escort Seth mentioned had been on leave for a week and was not present in the days surrounding the crime. Once his web of lies unraveled, Seth claimed he may have mistakenly referred to someone else. In an effort to bolster his alibi, Seth even arranged for a taxi driver to testify on his behalf. However, it was later uncovered that the taxi driver had been paid 50 AED by Seth to fabricate and sign a false statement. At this juncture, the police grew increasingly confident that Seth was indeed the perpetrator. Yet, they recognized that they still needed more concrete evidence to formally charge him. Intriguingly, the critical evidence that the police sought was unwittingly supplied by Seth himself. Following the undercover officer's revelation about the sighting of his car around 4:30 p.m., Seth became convinced that the officer had an informant within the police department. Driven by paranoia, he urged the officer to gather more intelligence. In a bizarre turn, he submitted a sketch of the crime scene that he had drawn himself. This sketch detailed the times of death for each victim, information that had never been disclosed to the public. Only the police and the true perpetrator would possess such knowledge. Moreover, the handwriting on the sketch mirrored that found at the crime scene, notably prior to Seth's official arrest. On the evening of June 2, 2002, a seemingly orchestrated incident unfolded. The police received a report of an assault around 8:30 p.m. Upon their arrival, they discovered Seth lying in a ditch, nursing minor facial injuries. Seth claimed that an unknown assailant had placed a plastic bag over his head and attacked him, yet he could not identify his attacker. However, a subsequent medical examination revealed that Seth bore no head injuries. This clumsy act of deception provided the police with a new lead. In a troubling account, Seth Gonzalez claimed that an assailant had placed a plastic bag over his head during an attack. However, when examined by a doctor, it became clear that he bore no head injuries. This clumsy charade provided the police with a new lead in their investigation. Seth's mention of the will's executor, his grandmother, piqued the police's interest. It was revealed that on February 23, 1998, Teddy and Mary Louisa Gonzalez had drafted a joint will. This document stipulated that upon the death of one spouse, the surviving partner would inherit all assets. In the event of both passing, the assets would be divided equally between Seth and his sister Claudine. With the grandmother named as the executor, police grew increasingly concerned that Seth might concoct another scheme. They feared he could stage an attack on his grandmother, making it look like an accidental death. Time was of the essence, and the investigation could not afford further delays. At 8 a.m. on June 13, 2002, the police executed a warrant for Seth Gonzalez's arrest on charges of murder. Following this pivotal moment, unsettling details about the Gonzalez family began to surface, offering insight into the possible motives behind Seth's shocking actions against his own loved ones. Teddy and Mary Louisa had dedicated themselves tirelessly to building the life they desired. Their hard work culminated in a substantial fortune, estimated at around 1.5 million AUD. Yet their strict demeanor extended beyond their own lives. They imposed high expectations on their children as well. They praised good performance, instilling in Seth a profound need for recognition from an early age. The pressure mounted as Teddy and Mary envisioned their son as a future cardiac surgeon and their daughter, Claudine, as a teacher. But reality told a different story. Seth struggled academically and found solace in his passion for singing after graduating high school. Despite his parents' dreams, he was unable to gain admission into any university programs for medicine or law. In 1999, Teddy went to great lengths to secure Seth a place in the medical program at the University of New South Wales. Seth's parents had envisioned a bright future for him, dreaming of him as a cardiac surgeon, while they hoped Claudine would follow a path to become a teacher. The reality, however, was starkly different. Seth had struggled academically, yet found solace in his passion for singing after graduating from high school. Claiming he was too busy to attend classes, Seth had indeed found time to become the lead singer of the band Definite Vibes, cultivating a following and even a website dedicated to his performances. The site showcased photos of him on stage, flaunting his physique and surrounded by adoring fans. His burgeoning music career left little room for academics, much to Teddy's chagrin. By mid-2000, Teddy made another attempt at steering Seth's life back on course by enrolling him in law school at Macquarie University. To motivate his son, he gifted him a car, which Seth cherished, even having a personalized license plate made bearing his name. Strangely, this gesture seemed to trigger a remarkable turnaround in Seth's academic performance. His grades began to improve dramatically, as if the weight of expectation had begun to fuel rather than stifle his ambitions. However, beneath this facade of success lay the dark undercurrents of jealousy and resentment, simmering just beneath the surface of the Gonzalez family dynamic. As the investigation delved deeper into Seth's life, it became painfully clear that the pressures of familial expectations, coupled with his own unfulfilled dreams, had forged a dangerous path. This path ultimately led him to betray those he once loved most, culminating in a tragic and shocking conclusion. In a bid to motivate his son, Teddy Gonzalez gifted Seth a car, an act meant to inspire him. Seth cherished the vehicle, even going so far as to customize the license plate with his name. Strangely, this gift seemed to spark a dramatic improvement in his academic performance. Despite these challenges, Seth excelled academically, consistently maintaining high grades. Each report card brought him fleeting joy, as his parents showered him with praise. On one occasion, in a moment of sibling camaraderie, Seth even showed his sister how to secretly alter her grade. With a few keystrokes, he changed her score from a modest 75 to an impressive 99.9. However, this act of defiance did not go unnoticed. His parents swiftly reprimanded him, warning that if he didn't concentrate on his studies, they would take away his beloved car. To make matters worse, his sister didn't keep his secret. She revealed not only the grade alteration, but also another of his deeply hidden embarrassments. Seth had struggled with bedwetting well into adulthood, a situation that became a source of ridicule within the family. Each incident forced their mother, Mary Louisa Gonzalez, to wash his clothes and bed linens. In her frustration, she would often nag him, suggesting he should seek help from a psychologist. This humiliating issue fed into a growing resentment that perhaps contributed to Seth's dark thoughts of revenge against his family. Compounding this pressure, when their parents discovered their daughter was dating at a young age, they swiftly sent her to Melbourne to finish her education, further tightening the reins on Seth's life. In an act of loyalty, Seth even sent threatening emails to his sister's boyfriend, demanding that the relationship end. Coincidentally, at the end of May in 2001, Seth's girlfriend of merely 2 weeks decided she wanted to break up. Desperate to win her back, he gifted her a necklace and promised to introduce her to his parents. Predictably, this act of desperation led to consequences akin to those his sister had faced. When Seth resisted his mother's disapproval, her words cut deep. "If you go back to that girl, you won't be welcome in this family anymore." As Seth Gonzalez faced the mounting pressures of his family, he felt as though he were losing control over his own life. The constant threats from his parents, warnings of losing his car, being cut off financially, or even disinheritance, loomed over him like a ticking time bomb, ready to explode. The final straw came when Seth's poor grades in 2 subjects triggered a harsh response from his parents. He had attempted to use a medical certificate for an upper respiratory infection to request a retake, but his plea fell on deaf ears. He recalled the sting of his parents' harsh words. "If you don't study properly, you should go back to the Philippines. Everything here in Australia will no longer be yours." Seth could not accept this ultimatum, particularly as he realized that everything his parents owned would one day belong to him anyway. The thought of having the autonomy to make his own decisions twisted in his mind. And so, on June 24th, Seth began to plot his dark course of action, setting his plan in motion to poison his family. That day, he ordered a batch of toxic plant seeds. When he checked on this order the following day, his heart sank. It had not yet shipped. Discouragingly, he learned that the supplier was on holiday. In a desperate attempt to expedite the order, Seth sent an email to the supplier, fabricating a story about needing the seeds as a birthday gift for his mother's upcoming 60th birthday. In a calculated attempt to mislead, Seth claimed that his mother had seen some seeds in Florida the previous year and had loved them. However, the truth was starkly different. Mary Louisa Gonzalez was 43 years old and had never set foot in Florida. On June 29th, the seeds arrived, just as Seth had hoped. The seeds arrived that Friday, and in a calculated move, Seth soaked them in hot water, mixing the infused liquid into his mother's food. By July 1st, Mary began exhibiting unusual symptoms, and by July 3rd, she was rushed to the hospital for emergency care. On the afternoon of July 4th, Mary was discharged, her health stabilized. To create a facade that his mother had been poisoned by food, Seth took the sinister step of writing 3 letters on July 2nd, each one steeped in deception. In a calculated move, Seth Gonzalez reached out to his mother's favorite food manufacturer, the local police station, and the health department. His letter to the manufacturer carried a chilling message. 3 of their products had been poisoned and were still on the shelves. With a mocking tone, he wrote, "Ha ha, this is what you get for mistreating your employees." The other 2 letters were laden with accusations, claiming the factory's poor management had compromised food safety. He insisted they had failed to recall the tainted products in time and had not offered an apology to the public. Seth's sinister goal was to convince everyone that his mother had fallen victim to food poisoning, a ploy designed to deflect suspicion away from himself. He even feigned a stomachache while they were at the hospital. However, he was unprepared for the unexpected twist of fate. What Seth did not foresee was his mother's remarkable recovery. As the police delved deeper, they speculated that Seth had likely mishandled the extraction of the toxin. Just days later, on July 6th, tensions erupted into a fierce argument between Seth and his mother regarding his relationship with his girlfriend. Mary Louisa Gonzalez reprimanded him fiercely, declaring, "If you keep seeing her, don't bother stepping foot in this house again." Seth was all too familiar with such ultimatums. His sister had been sent to Melbourne for her studies after a similar conflict. The thought of being sent back to the Philippines filled Seth with dread. He felt trapped, especially with his sister home for the summer, enjoying the praise and affection that he so desperately craved. The disparity in their parents' treatment was painfully evident. While his sister basked in constant commendation, Seth found himself under the weight of relentless criticism. After his sister's birthday party on July 9th, feelings of isolation washed over him. His car had been confiscated, his allowance slashed, and when his grades were revealed, he realized his situation was only going to deteriorate. As he spiraled deeper into despair, his anxiety morphed into something darker. No longer did he only entertain thoughts of harming his mother. Now, the idea of eliminating his father and sister crept into his mind, threats to his inheritance. With his sister set to return to Melbourne on July 12th, he resolved to act the very next day. Dinner plans with a friend were already set for 8 o'clock p.m. In a chilling contemplation, Seth Gonzalez pondered the unthinkable, eliminating his father and sister, both of whom posed a threat to his inheritance. Aware that his sister would return to Melbourne on July 12th, he resolved to act swiftly, choosing the very next day to execute his dark plans. That evening, he had dinner plans with a friend set for 8 o'clock p.m., a seemingly ordinary alibi masking his sinister intentions. The following morning unfolded like any other, as Seth attended school and fulfilled his duties at the family company. However, as the clock struck 4:15 p.m., he returned home, retrieving a baseball bat he had meticulously prepared and hidden in the trunk of his car. The stage was set for a chilling act that would shatter his family's world. In a calculated move, Seth Gonzalez felt the simmering rage within him was still unsatisfied. He ventured into the kitchen and seized the 2 longest knives he could find. Silently, he ascended the staircase, making his way to his sister's room, where the air was thick with impending dread. The years of resentment and humiliation surged through him like a relentless tide. At precisely 5:30 p.m., as his mother, Mary Louisa Gonzalez, walked through the front door, Seth unleashed his fury in a brutal attack. In that moment, he had completely surrendered to his overwhelming rage. With the deed done, Seth bided his time, patiently waiting for over an hour until his father, Teddy Gonzalez, returned home. After completing his grim task, he began to manipulate the scene, tossing around a briefcase to create chaos. Seth ransacked the closets and pried open the kitchen window, striving to stage a scene of a break-in. He changed out of his blood-stained clothes, taking a quick shower to wash away the evidence of his heinous act. In a desperate attempt to divert suspicion, he spray-painted racist slurs on the walls, trying to frame the attack as racially motivated. Yet, the paint residue found on his jacket would soon unravel his web of lies. This small piece of evidence would serve to pinpoint him at the crime scene after 7 p.m. Seth discarded the weapons and then met up with a friend, following through on their predetermined plans. They dined at Planet Hollywood, feigning normalcy. The 2 friends spent the rest of the evening immersed in arcade games, long after the clock struck 11 p.m. Seth harbored a desperate hope that someone would stumble upon his family, creating the perfect alibi for him. But upon returning home, he was met with an unsettling silence that wrapped around him like a shroud. By 11:45 p.m., the reality of his situation dawned on him, forcing him to call the police himself. Earlier, while hiding in the shadows of his home, Seth had seen a figure arrive around 6 p.m., which was why he had initially concocted a lie about being at the front door at that time. However, unbeknownst to him, a client of Teddy's had actually stopped by at 4:30 p.m. and witnessed Seth's car parked outside. Throughout his life, deceit had become second nature to Seth. Lies had woven themselves into the fabric of his existence, particularly when it came to crafting an image of success. Seth lied with such audacity that, in the eyes of his peers, he was not just a mere teenager but a world boxing champion and a future music star. He claimed that his performance of One Sweet Day at a family funeral had secured him $1 million recording contract. Additionally, he boasted of having a stable job at the family's law office and even claimed ownership of a modeling agency. The models showcased on his fan club's website were merely fragments of the elaborate facade he had constructed. But like fragile soap bubbles, Seth's lies could only mask the truth for so long before they inevitably shattered. On May 20th, 2004, the truth caught up with him. Seth was sentenced to 3 life sentences, alongside an additional penalty for threatening to contaminate food. Despite his persistent claims of innocence, the jury took into account a rare, poisonous plant discovered in Seth's garden. The discarded seeds, which he had carelessly overlooked, now stood as the most damning evidence against him. Though Seth was adept at crafting lies, his attention to detail was tragically lacking. The fan club website? It was a creation of his own making. As the year 2003 unfolded, the family home was put up for sale, marking the beginning of a new chapter in their tragic story. The once vibrant home had transformed into a haunted edifice in Sydney that repelled potential buyers. In August 2004, a Buddhist couple from Taiwan, drawn by the home's prime location and unique layout, particularly the altar on the second floor, decided to purchase it. They placed a hefty deposit of $80,000 AUD, only to feel a wave of regret after uncovering the house's tragic history. Feeling misled, they demanded a refund from the real estate agency. Initially, the agency resisted, with the two agents dismissively insisting, "We did nothing wrong. If you didn't ask, why should we tell?" This refusal escalated the situation. The local fair trading office took notice and launched an investigation. Ultimately, justice prevailed as the $80,000 deposit was refunded, and the real estate agents faced a fine of $21,000 AUD for breaching fair trading laws. Furthermore, the local real estate association was compelled to revise its regulations, instituting measures to ensure that buyers receive complete disclosure about properties moving forward. A sign was erected in front of the house, marking it as the home of the Gonzalez family. Yet the property's value continued to plummet. It wasn't until October 7, 2005 that a mysterious buyer emerged, acquiring the house for $720,000 AUD. This buyer's identity remained just as enigmatic as the house's dark past. In a statement to Women's Day magazine, a representative asserted that the haunting legacy of the house would not deter them from realizing their dream home. Meanwhile, on March 26, 2001, Seth Gonzalez faced another setback as his third appeal was denied. Now he finds himself serving a life sentence, classified as a high-risk inmate. Currently, Seth is incarcerated at Lithgow Correctional Center in New South Wales. The enigma surrounding the meaning of his name, a secret his father once promised to unveil on Seth's 21st birthday, remains forever shrouded in darkness. He will never know the truth, nor will he have the opportunity to confront his father about it. As we close the chapter on this case, we invite you to reflect on the identity and motives of the perpetrator. What are your thoughts? Share your insights with us below. Until next time, goodbye.